Mr. Bailiff, would you please pass me 2 charge sheets from the side to find out what the charges against Mr. Dream are? Just 2.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. You may take a seat. So we have 2 charges laid out against you here, Mr. Dream. One is more serious than the other, although I will discuss that with the lawyers in the back room. I'm going to ask you each individual charge how you plead, Mr. Dream. So, Mr. Dream, to the charge of robbery, how do you plead? Not guilty. And to the charge of murder, Mr. Dream, how do you plead?
Guilty.
Not guilty. Very well. I must admit, when people do judge guilty on me, I do tend to get them to rethink their life choices because they like to be alive. But very well. We have, that's absolutely fine. He can sit out there all he wants. I think it's Maltras. He's fine. So we will move on to a judge-based trial. We do not have a jury in this case, so I will be the judge, jury, and executioner if required. We have Mr. Sprett on the prosecuting stand, a well-experienced lawyer who I have has beaten me in court more times than anyone else, which I think is twice. Hurrah. And on the defending side, we have Mr. Flamewolf, who is currently out of his sanitary job in the shit factory to try and win a case so he doesn't have to go back to the shit factory, as we found in the last case. Hello, Mr. Maltras. If you'd be kind enough to take a seat, I'd vastly appreciate that. What will happen is the lawyers will be given time to collect their evidence once they've had a discussion with me in the back. This will work a little bit differently, though, since we're in a private room. We have a bit more time. What will happen is the accused and his lawyer will be given time to speak to in the back room with each other so they can come up with a rough story. The prosecuting lawyer will set out his evidence. Then the prosecuting lawyer will be given 5 minutes to speak to the accused without his lawyer there, where the accused must be fairly truthful, just to discuss so we have a rough idea of what's going on, and the defense lawyer will do his evidence at that time. It sounds complicated, but that's why we have a bailiff to guide you through. This just means that the lawyers get a little bit of time to speak with the accused, so the accused knows what's going on, and you sort of get a rough idea as to what's going on. So, without too much further ado, I'm going to invite Mr. Sprett and Mr. Wolf into my chambers, where we shall discuss the merits of these 2 charges. So, lawyers, if you be kind enough to come with me, Mr. Bailiff, stay here and make sure nobody catches fire.
Thank you.
Go take a seat.
Yeah, stay.
Okie dokie, so the lawyers have returned, the charges have been discussed, we know which is the more serious and which is the latter. However, I will be giving no further information at this point in time, for that is the lawyer's job. What's going to happen now is I'm going to ask Mr. Tobin in a moment to escort Mr. Flame and his client.
It's pronounced Tobin, Your Honor.
Mr. Tobin, in a moment I'm going to ask you to take the accused and his lawyer into the back room where they will discuss the case for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you to go with Mr. Sprett to the evidence room and just make sure there's no foul play going on in the evidence room. Mr. Tobin, if you'd be kind enough to do that, you have 5 minutes from when you leave the room, Mr. Dreamless and Mr. Wolf.
Like I said, it's pronounced Tobin.
Tobin, I apologise, I'm shit at words. Please proceed with your job, Mr. Tobin.
Okay, which direction is
Out the main doors, second door on the right. Main doors.
Oh, there.
Second door on the right, so the farthest back one. And then hopefully he'll come back. Hopefully he'll come back. Hello, Turtle, can I help you? Coming back, is he? He's not coming back. Sprett, do you want to go and start sorting your evidence out? I trust you, Mr. Sprett. I've seen you in court enough to know that you're not a complete twat. Right, my apologies about that. So, the prosecuting lawyer has returned. Mr. Sprett, have you sorted all of your evidence out?
Yes.
Lovely. Well, in that case, then, Mr. Sprett, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak to Mr. Dreamless in the back room. Mr. Tobin, would you be kind enough to escort the prosecuting lawyer and the accused into the same room as before, and then come back, please, Mr. Tobin? Lawyers, you may do that. Tobin, sorry, I am trying. I'm trying. Go escort. Go do your job. I'll call you Mr. Bailiff from now on. The court order in the court. Hello there and welcome to VR Courtroom. Judge EKRON sitting to hear the crimes against Mr. Dream. Mr. Dream has pled not guilty to the charges charges of robbery and murder. The lawyers have had time to establish their evidence in the room and speak with the accused. So, Mr. Spratt, I'm well aware that you're aware of the rules of court, but I'm going to ask Mr. Wolf, are you aware of the rules of court?
I could use a very quick refresher, but other than that, I should be fine.
Okay, so we'll do a quick refresher then. Procedure of court, we're adding in amendments in this one, which amendments come after the full and frank cases. This is where the lawyers can change their case if they so desire. So, for example, Mr. Spratt might have said that Mr. Dream likes to stick a dildo up his bottom, but it turns out that Mr. Dream mentions in his case that he likes to stick it in his left earlobe. Mr. Spratt could make the amendment to his case that it goes in the left earlobe. This just allows you to be a little bit more consistent and make really obvious changes that are required. You are not required to make amendments. It is up to the judge if I accept amendments, and the other lawyer may object to amendments. So they're very rarely used. In fact, I think this entire year I've only seen one example of amendments being used correctly, and that was 3 weeks ago. So that's about it. The procedure otherwise is the same as it was. Opening statements, full of frank cases, amendments, closing statements, judge's summary, which is where I talk about the cases as I've interpreted them, judgment, and sentencing. The other main difference here as well is that the lawyers will be allowed to ask Mr. Dream questions during their case as they see fit. Mr. Dream is allowed to refuse to answer these questions, but those refusals will be taken into consideration. Talking about, say, I don't know, let's say he has a coffee cup. He could ask Mr. Dream if Mr. Dream likes to drink coffee. And Mr. Dream could say, yes. And then Mr. Spratt could say, but I have CCTV evidence that shows that you actually like to shove it up your asshole for fun. So you can do that, Mr. Spratt. Or Mr. Spratt could go, Mr. Dream, do you like to drink coffee? And Mr. Dream could go, I refuse to answer the question. To which Mr. Spratt could go, fair enough, I can't make you talk, but I think that says a lot more about you than it does me. As I said, the judge will take into consideration the refusal to answer questions, so if you can answer in a way that doesn't completely jeopardize you, I suggest you do. Lawyers may object to continuous question asking of the accused. So Mr. Spratt just keeps going, hey, Dream, do you smell funny? Why do you smell funny? Do you smell funny? Why do you smell funny? Why do you smell like shit? Mr. Flame could object with a badgering claim. So they're the main changes to the previous court case. Mr. Spratt, do you kind of get those bits and pieces there?
Yeah, sure.
Lovely. Mr. Flame or Mr. Wolf, Mr. whatever you are, do you understand the changes in procedure there?
Yes.
Lovely. So we've got the same standard procedure. The same objection rules apply. If you want to object, say objection and wait for me to either allow it, abstain it, or overrule it. Try to make your objections on point and relevant, and you can only object during main cases and amendments. We will obviously still be running with coin tosses if required, and the numbers game if required as well. Those will come up as we see fit. I might not tell you the answer. It depends on how serious the point is. You know, if it's a super serious thing that will destroy somebody's case, I won't tell you until the end because I'm a dick. Suspension of disbelief is the same as it always was. You know, if you say this piece of paper is actually a list of the website listing of the dildo that Mr. Dream likes to shove in his earlobe, we can believe that as an example of suspension of disbelief. So there's that as well. And yeah, have a laugh at the end of the day. And that's a very quick and amended thing. But, Mr. Spratt, are there any questions you'd like to ask about anything before we proceed? Very good. Mr. Wolf, are there any questions you'd like to ask about this before we proceed?
Not at this time, no.
Very well. Well, in that case, then, I do believe that we are ready to begin. So this is the point where I generally quieten down. I may ask the occasional question, but in general, I won't be doing much outside of answering basic things and doing the game. So I'm going to lend the floor to Mr. Spratt to make his opening statement to the court first. So, Mr. Spratt, if you could stand in the circle of communication, I would vastly appreciate that, and present the court your opening case without referring to me as ma'am this time, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, this case is about that Mr. Dream here went up to his boss, killed him in cold blood to steal his money that the boss earned from selling a picture of Mr. Dream here on body pillows. this money Mr. Dream was gonna use to buy pizzas. That's it.
Okay, thank you for your opening statement, Mr. Sprett. Well, I've certainly learned a lot of information there. Mr. Wolf, if you be kind enough to stand in the circle of communication and make your opening statement, I will pretend to care. I mean, appreciate that.
All right. So my client, Mr. Dream, was in the facility during the day of the crime, but he was simply there to talk with his boss and have a proper discussion regarding the pictures that have been taken of him and the result of those pictures. There was no intention to murder or harm, and there was no intent to steal. That is all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wolf, and thank you, lawyers in general, for your opening statements. Very good opening statements from both lawyers, giving away some information, and the scene has certainly been set in a way that I'm thoroughly looking forward to, and I'm sure now that the people in the bench have discovered and found out what we're doing, they'll be looking forward to it as well. So, hey-ho, let's crack on. I'm going to ask Mr. Ooh, always a tough one. Who do we ask to go first? I'm going to ask Mr. Sprett to present his full and frank case to the court first, using all of the evidence that he has acquired. Mr. Wolf, you may object as you see fit, following the objection rules. Mr. Sprett, once you're in the circle of communication, you may begin your inane talking, and I'll pretend once again to care. The floor belongs to you, Mr. Sprett. Don't sell it on eBay. I can't afford a new one.
Okay. If you will put on evidence number 1, I think.
I believe that.
No, number A. Okay, as we know, Mr. Dream here did not like that his boss was putting his picture of him on the body pillows that we can see on the right side of this camera as an example of a body pillow. The boss who put his picture on the body pillows, selling them on the black market for a huge amount of money. Mr. Dream here wanted money for himself, so he decided to go up to his boss, and he wanted a big cut of the money the boss was making from selling his body pillow. It ended up in a fight, as you can imagine, and he pulled out this knife and ended up killing the boss.
Objection.
Go ahead with your objection, Mr. Wolf.
My client has stated in private that they have never owned a knife or any form of sharp weapon previously.
Mrs. Sprett, do you have anything
Does
to
this
say?
sword look familiar to you, Mr. Dream?
He said that he had never owned a knife. You don't have a knife in your kitchen. It looks like lying to me, Your Honor, but...
Thank you for your objection, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Sprett, you may carry on as you see fit.
Okay, if you will put on evidence number B. That was kind of hard to see on the left side. What Mr. Dream did not know was the boss's room or building had a CC camera. As you can see on